Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons, and we do dip into some other ttrpgs from time to time. This week, we are getting back into talking about some of the Unearthed Arcana that has been released, and we're going to talk about the Shadow Sorcerer. As always, we want to give a big thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. What you do is absolutely amazing for us, and it helps keep the channel moving forward and keeping us doing the things that we love to do. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, the link is in the description, as well as a link to our live stream game channel and our friends at Critical Failures, who were part of a live stream game. With that out of the way, let's jump right into the video. First and foremost, one of the things I like the most is they did add a little bit more of an emphasis towards the undead with the Shadow Sorcerer. Where it did exist previously, now there's a little bit more of it, and I really like that because I have a special place in my heart for the undead, which I think a lot of you should also. So they do add a little bit more ribbon and flavoring to tie you into that, and I think that's really awesome. So there are some changes. There are definitely some nerfs to this, but we'll keep that in mind, and we'll go forward and see how everything kind of works out. First off, at level 3, you gain Eyes of the Dark. You have dark vision with a range of 120 feet and blind sight with a range of 10 feet. In addition, if you cast a spell that creates an area of darkness, you can see normally through that spell's darkness. This is a little interesting of a circumstance. Now, blind sight has a lot of uses. You can use it. It's always passively on, so you're always using it. So what that means is if anything's invisible within 10 feet of you, you can sense it, you can see it, you can attack it if you do so choose. So if you're in like fog cloud or something like that, this is a really big benefit for you, because even though you're not in a darkness in the spell that you created, because it's so heavily obscured, you can't see anything when you're in it or from the outside looking in. So having that 10-foot range gives you advantage on any attacks you would make with anyone that was in within 10 feet of you, because you can see them and they cannot see you. Blind sight has a very cool little aspect in that kind of ratio. Now that's very, very specific, but there are other things that might give you, might make things difficult for you to see. So if you get blinded or deafened, you can still see within 10 feet of you because you have blind sight. So it is really unique of a buff. It's kind of niche, but it does give you the option to still be able to work some sort of vision in other people's darkness, which is a really cool thing. Also, it does save you on a sorcery point cost, where you would have to cast darkness with your sorcery point previously in order to be able to see inside of it. And as you've known before and in the past, it is a very powerful thing to be able to have almost permanent advantage and disadvantage on anyone trying to hit you. So that works out really, really, really well, because magical darkness doesn't get impeded by dark vision. You need to be able to see specifically into magical darkness to see into the darkness spell. So you need to either be a devil or have devil sight or true sight or something along those lines. Now, also at level 3, you do get spells specifically for the Shadow Sorcerer labeled Shadow Spells. Now, when you gain spells in this kind of a fashion, you just hit the level and then the spells are always prepared. It doesn't say that it counts against your spells known or how many spells you can prepare for the day. As we've gotten spells previously, they've all been added onto your spells without a cost what spells you can know. So I'm considering this the same fashion and following that guideline, because otherwise it kind of makes it like warlock spells, where you get the availability to add these spells to your spell list. These spells are already prepared. But you get some really great ones. You get Bane, which I happen to love, Darkness, Inflict Wounds, Pass Without a Trace, all at level 3. At level 5, you get Hunger of Hadar and Summon Undead. At level 7, you get Greater Invisibility and Phantasmal Killer. And at level 9, you get Contagion and Creation. These are great spells in their own. Having them always prepared gives you a lot of versatility to be a sorcerer and to be willing to take some other spells to fill in what other gaps you might need. The one I see probably getting the least amount of traction, in all honesty, is probably Greater Invisibility. Because that's a little bit more of a circumstantial kind of a thing. But everything else is very thematic, for the Shadow Sorcerer. There's all this necrotic damage, there's all this darkness, there's all these like evil creatures manifesting in one way or the next, and that's really great for the theme of what a Shadow Sorcerer really is. At level 6, you gain Spirits of Ill Omen. This is very different from the Hound of Ill Omen, but once I've read through everything, I'll explain the differences and kind of how it kind of works out. So, at level 6, Spirits of Ill Omen grants you the ability to cast Summon Undead without a material component. You can also cast it once without a spell slot, and you regain the ability to cast it in this way when you finish a long rest. Whenever you start casting the spell, you can modify it so it doesn't require concentration. If you do so, the spell's duration becomes 1 minute for that casting, and the spell ends early if you cast it again. Now, the Hound of Ill Omen used to be, I want to say it was a heavy sorcery point cost, and you summon a creature, and that creature would only target one other creature. So it would only move towards that target and attack that one target. But when the creature was in 5 feet of that target had disadvantage on saving throws, either against just the sorcerer's spells or just disadvantage overall. I don't remember exactly, but either way, that really helped to negate the magical resistance a lot of higher ending enemies have. Bosses usually had that. So once you've chewed through legendary resistance, and it's worth it to do so, trust me, that would make it just a regular roll for them to see if they saved against your spells, which is a big, big change. And if you landed a debuffing spell on a boss, that changes the fight a lot. That crushes them because you really get to see the power of debuffs and how that works, and how these conditions can really be debilitating for an enemy. So that's what the Hound of Ill Omen used to do. Now, Spirits of Ill Omen doesn't do that. So you lose that disadvantage constantly applied to that enemy. Granted, you could have killed the Hound of Ill Omen relatively quickly at later levels, but it is one of those circumstances where you're wasting an attack on that, or you're hitting one of the power players, which is a stronger enemy to fight. Now, Summon Undead comes with its own benefits. It's a great spell. I like it. Having it for a minute does reduce its duration, but that's about the same amount as the Hound of Ill Omen. But what you do gain is the ability to throw another spell that requires concentration out on the field. Being able to have 2 concentration spells going at the same time is massive. That is really, really impressive. Now, understand that depending on what kind of circumstance you're in, that really kind of depicts what spells you would use. But if you threw out Hunger of Hadar and then had the Summon Undead next to it, funneling people, so that they had to either go through a whole bunch of, like a wall of enemies, walk through either Hunger of Hadar, or maybe your player characters are positioned in a different point, so that way they have to mitigate one of the two. Or you could put it right behind them and have if you're in a choke point, and have the Summon Undead just blocking that area so they can't get through without chewing through him, and they suffer the effects of Hunger of Hadar in between. That is a great use of this. This helps take pressure off the tanks, because when you cast Summon Undead at higher levels, they do have more hit points, and they do different things depending on which one you want. So you do gain an option of flexibility there, and you can have a second concentration spell going. It's a massive, massive tactical ability to do that. The more creative you are and the more attention you pay to your spell list, the bigger the payoff this ability is. So it requires some finesse, some tactical thinking, some cunning to really get the most out of this, but it is really strong in that kind of a context. How it balances out against the Hound of Ill Omen, I think, in all honesty, this might be better. Granted that you do not have that disadvantage, which is huge when you're casting spells that can stun or disable or paralyze or debuff just in general. That makes a huge difference, and it can be game changing to hit that. But this gives you a little bit more sustained damage, because all the undead do have an attack that's based off your spellcasting modifier, so it's gonna probably have its best chance to hit. On top of that, an extra concentration spell going out in the world can really change what's going on. You can do environmental hazards. You can hold off another enemy. You can disable some other enemies while focusing on a big bad. You can really be tactful and lead the combat with that. And I think that opens up a lot of options. So in my opinion, the Spirits of Ill Omen is in fact better. Moving on to level 14, you gain Shadow Walk. While you are dim light or darkness, you can take a bonus action to teleport 120 feet to an unoccupied space that you can see that is also within dim light or darkness. This hasn't changed at all. And now the capstone ability is Umbral Form. As a bonus action, you adopt a shadowy form, gaining benefits below for 1 minute until you have the incapacitated condition or you end the form. No action required. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest, unless you spend 6 sorcery points to restore your use of it. You have incorporeal movement. You can move through spaces as if they were difficult terrain, and if you end your turn in such a space, you take 1d10 force damage. Shadow Resilience, you have resistance to all damage except force and radiant damage. And Strength of the Grave. If you would drop to 5 hit points and not die outright, you make a charisma saving throw. The DC is 5 plus half the damage taken. If you succeed, your hit point instead change to a number equal to 3 times your sorcerer level. Now, here's one of the major things. Strength of the Grave now at 18th level as opposed to when you used to get it, which was at Jump Street, which was level 1 in the regular 5th edition rules, is a huge change. This is going to be the biggest nerf everyone's going to see. This is going to be a major issue because it does reduce the defensive capabilities of the Shadow Sorcerer by a lot. Most people will not hit level 18. It's very rare that you will see this, and to wait for such an iconic connection to the Shadow Sorcerer, like the token ability, that's one of the things that draws people into the Shadow Sorcerer immediately is Strength of the Grave. For it to be this far back, I think is a mistake. I think something should be changed and you should get this earlier. And maybe Umbral Form, maybe you could get an extra buff or something. But it's one of those things that's like, at this point, it's a little too late, because that saving throw is going to be rough. At 18th level, you got to make a saving throw. DC is 5 plus half the damage taken. You can take 80 points of damage. You know what I mean? Like, that can happen. The resistance to all damage does help, so maybe you did take 40 or something like that. But, you're taking heavy hits at level 18. And you are a sorcerer, so you're not expected to have super high constitution or super high hit points. It's not really one of those things that's granted for a sorcerer. And you're starting out with a low hit dice, so it's tough to get the hit points out there. That's the biggest thing, is that's really, really high up for a benefit you used to get on the complete opposite of the spectrum at first level. Shadow Resilience, awesome. And Corporeal Movement, great. The fact that you can use it once without requiring a sorcery point expenditure is awesome. Like, that's 6 sorcery points you don't have to spend to use this ability. That makes this ability a little bit better. What they should realistically do is give you the availability to force disadvantage on a saving throw of one of your spells cast per turn. And put Strength of the Grave earlier. I think that would make this incredibly more balanced. I don't think it makes it too strong, because again, you can only use it for 1 minute, so that's 10 rounds. And if you're using Umbral Form at a level 18, you're fighting some things that have a lot of magical resistance or are really likely to make saves or have legendary resistance in the first place. Resistance to all damage is something you want to use when you're fighting a big bad. You're a sorcerer. Most of the time, you should be in the back. You have access to Shadow Walk. If anything comes close to you, you should be using your bonus action to get away from that. So you can stave off needing to use Umbral Form for a really long time. Again, it is tricky to balance things out, but I think that should be switched out legitimately. And that's the new Shadow Sorcerer. I hope hope they change Strength of the Grave and move it up a little bit and give Umbral Form a little extra oomph, because at 18th level you need everything you can get. On top of that, it's such a dedicated amount of levels to one class that a lot of multi-class people will never see this. So with that in mind, thank you so much. If you've made it through all the way to this part of the video, definitely hit that like and subscribe. It makes a huge impact for us. And definitely check us out on Patreon and check us out on our Wednesday game, which is Curse of Strahd, and we are with Critical Failures, which is an awesome group of people. Definitely check us out. And also a link to our live stream gaming channel is there as well. Give us a shout out, check us out there, and thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.